Hello everyone, and in today's video we'll be looking at a scenario where India from Addizpros Wicso comes into the modern day. And before the video starts, let me say this, like, the Lime team here isn't a good representation. I had to draw these borders myself and I'm not good at drawing borders, so yeah, it looks a bit weird over here in like Indonesia. It looks fine, I guess, in Madagascar too. But in some places, like South America, it looks a bit it doesn't look like the Lime team. In North America, I'd say I did decent. I don't know. Anyways, let's look at this scenario where India comes into modern day. So the first thing India will do is, because they want to form relations with countries, as currently they have no allies, so they'll try to form relations with China and Pakistan. And what would it be? What better way to do this to split up India? So let's look at the treaty that splits up the rest of India. And in this treaty, we can see India get the most amount of land, which is to be expected. They ruled over most of India. Pakistan gets like Kashmir and a bit more, not a lot, but they get this much more. And China gets all of this land here, which leaves poor old Nepal or Bhutan, whichever one, leaves poor old Bhutan, yeah. And they're just going to be annexed by China. As, I mean, it's just free land. Who doesn't like free land? India, because India will go on a little conquest in the mains of India. And yet China isn't very happy. I don't know if India at this island here, but I'm going to give it them. China isn't happy. They lost a lot of land. And Macau and Hong Kong, they also lost that. They're not happy, they lost that. And that was pretty important land, as like a lot of people live there, but they're fine. They're gonna, anyways, India take over the rest of Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Not own that. They're not actually. And yet they'll take over all these countries, which looks like this. And these are actually some very nice borders for India. But they'll be going something else as Iran. They have all this coast here, a lot of coast. They have barely any coast. And, they're kind of mad, but I mean, they could probably survive like this. But Iran will form an alliance with India, which will look like this. So yeah, Iran and India will agree to carve up Iraq. So let's look at this war. And they also declare war on this thing, Kuwait. So anyways, Iranian troops will move up from the north, and Iran will mostly focus on the north, as they know Turkey would like a bit of Iraq. So they will block Turkey off from getting any parts of Iraq, which Turkey doesn't like, but they can't do anything about it. India, that's what's happening at the moment. They will make a landing in Kuwait and take over the entire thing. What? And with two fronts happening, Iraq will face invasion from all of their borders, and eventually Baghdad is taken in a pretty bloody battle. But the green team, I guess, wins, and eventually Iraq will surrender. So we can look at this peace treaty, which India really doesn't take a lot. They only take Kuwait, and Iraq goes to Iran. And there's two reasons they do this. First, they already have a lot of Persian Gulf coastal sea. I mean, they have all this sea access here, and now from Kuwait and here and here. And also to improve relations with Iran, because Iran kinda need this coast, even though it's not a lot, still something. And Iran takes it, and relations between these two are immediately better. But focusing in on a different area now, we go over to Indonesia, who barely exists, and yeah, they'll just be taken over by the Indians, which causes tensions with Papua New Guinea because they were building up to take the rest of Indonesia, but they don't have Indonesia anymore because it's New Persian. Well, not yet New Persian, but Indian. And yeah, let's go over to South America and I guess the actual Americas. As Alaska is suffering. There's no one there, and there's nothing there. So the USA will make an agreement with not with New India, with Canada to give it to them, as they don't want India from getting too much stronger, as they're already pretty much unstoppable at this point. And the world doesn't want them to get even stronger, so the US just gives Alaska to Canada, which makes a very nice border. But so cause relations with the US to drop. Not so much with Canada, but they'll drop. So India will take over. They're gonna take over the US's allies in Central America, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. And yeah, US is mad, but they're not going to say anything because they really can't, as India is just too strong. But yeah, this Panama Canal, you might think New India will seize it and everyone has to pay taxes, but India will be fair and let everyone go for it as if nothing happened. But over here in southern South America, a big war will happen between Chile and Argentina and India and Bolivia. So let's look at this war. Then, eventually, immediately, the southern part of Chile will be seized, and in the northern part of Argentina, facing a giant invasion across all of the border for Argentina, they will see invasion. But down here for Chile, they are able to help Argentina push the Indians back because even with losing all this land, Argentina is still a strong country in South America. Regionally, at least. I don't know about world for Argentina, but regionally, they're still the second strongest in South America. Eventually, Chile will even see invasion, which leads to all this land here surrendering over. Yeah, as they don't want to fight, as India is being very good at war. They're able to take all this land here, all the northern land for Argentina, and Argentina is seeing heavy casualties, including Venice Airways being captured, which is not good for Argentina, because that is, of course, their capital. Eventually, though, with Chile pulling out of the war, Argentina will surrender, and we can look at this peace treaty between Bolivia, India, Argentina, and Chile. And this is the peace treaty. Now, a lot happened. Most notably, Argentina and Chile are extremely weak, and as they're only left to this dirt poor, doing whatever it is they do here. Quick quote from Addizpros. Bolivia also gets land and a bit of Argentina, but India gets the most. And you might be thinking, with all this expansion they've been doing, it's actually surprising that a coalition hasn't formed against them. Well, you just jinxed it. A coalition forms against them. Yeah, and this coalition forms, and it is gigantic. But the Indians and Iranians are going to notice there's some people, you know, some countries they can ally with. Said countries being Yemen, that's really it. Ethiopia and Venezuela and also Cuba. They're like some countries they can ally with because they don't like some members on blue team. And also, I guess they can ally with, actually, I don't know, no one. Yeah, like thinking why some countries join this alliance, like why did South Africa join this alliance? Well, that's because It's just because with the Persians being in Madagascar, they thought they'd come from a valuable country. And why did like Tajikistan, this thing, this country in Central Asia, why did it join? I don't know, it just did. Probably because Iran's on its border. Anyways, the war will start. So let's look at this war. First of all, in Saudi Arabia, the Palestinians have been. Why is this happening to the ocean? Let me just change it. Right, we now have a red ocean. That's the only thing I could do. Well, this would be very bad because I don't know why. Anyways, over in Saudi Arabia, India and Iran have been waiting to jump them, to invade them, and they invade them quite fast. It's one of the strongest countries on this alliance. So we need to wipe them out as soon as possible. And yeah, over in Africa, I almost said Abyssinia, Somalia, Ethiopia finally, will invade Somalia. Yeah, and they're able to help with the Arabian campaign, but they're probably sending like ships down here. And they make a landing. And India is dealing with these fronts very fast, so they need to get to the more important fronts like in the Americas, in Oceania. So with Oman being taken over, Saudi Arabia will surrender. But with Turkey it's a bit different. They won't rush into Azerbaijan and take it over. And the weird water things happening. And with Tajikistan and not Afghanistan, but in Turkey it's not going so well, and the Turkish are able to put up a strong defence. They're even able to push back in some places. And yeah, this is the Palestinians and Iranians a bit worried. Let's look at a new continent. Yeah, and this is America. The Americas. So what happens over here? So things aren't going so well for India and Iran over here, as all this land here is taken, and I don't know why Haiti's green and some of these Bahamian islands. Doesn't matter though, they're being taken over. Who cares if they're innocent? Never mind. Just never mind. Anyways, all this Indian land here is starting to be taken, and over in South America, the Argentinians and Chileans will start a small invasion, not a big invasion, but a small. But they are weak after what happened. But Brazil is in this war. Brazil's one of the strongest countries in the world and the strongest South American country. So it will go good for South America. And how does that keep happening? They're able to invade into Colombia, into Venezuela, and they're kind of rushing it as they need to help America with the Alaska Purchase. Anyways, over to the Alaska Purchase. India has a lot of like military stuff here, so when the blue team invade, it doesn't go as well. India is able to hold out in some of the coastal areas. Like over here in Alaska is where they'll struggle. Indian troops that are like they're designed for the cold. Sorry, I need to get this cold real quick. It's a bit embarrassing. That are designed for the cold will start to move into Canada as yeah, they just do. And these troops will immediately make an effect as they make a spear head out to try encircle these troops here, and it goes very well. So that as this little bulge here is able to encircle all these troops here. Eventually they all surrender or die. And India's colony here is able to be liberated a bit more, but only like the more developed areas, they are able to hold out a bit better. Eventually, though, with main American and Canadian armies arriving, the Indians have pushed back. Oh, they're not. Canada's not uniting. The Indians are pushed back greatly, as they're pretty much pushed back to their border. As I mean, these troops are trained for the cold, but they're not trained. Well, they're not specialised enough to take on armies. So yeah, India being pushed back. over in the north, some real special troops, designed for it called, start to move into Canadian Alaska. And they're able to take pretty much all of Alaska, as Canada wasn't really expecting this, as they didn't know India had this much special troops. Eventually, they will stop the invasion in Alaska because it's too cold and they're freezing to death, and will otherwise refocus on these fronts down here. Luckily for the blue team in the south, they're starting to take a lot of land, and all this part of land here will be taken, and yeah, a slow campaign of moving up Alaska will happen as Canadian troops start to push back in Pacific here and start to move in over here to the kind of more populated areas of Alaska, but they're not able to take this land here as it's just too cold. But they are able to reach the border here, and they will push back the troops over here. But now let's look at another front line. Over in South America, with aid coming to this colony, they're able to push back the Argentinians and Chileans, and will push back pretty much Brazil a bit, not a lot, but a bit. And of course, with all this happening, they will start an invasion of Argentina and Chile. And this invasion goes very well. Take pretty much all the leftover populated areas of these countries, and they will surrender over to India. And with some new troops arriving on the border, able to push Brazil and this thing here all the way out of their country, which is unrealistic. Brazil would be able to put up a defence, but India's kind of rushing this front line. So you have more important front lines, and they will start to quickly invade Brazil and taking over all this country here, starting to take over a lot of populated areas for Brazil. Eventually, the Brazilian army will arrive and start to push back India, even trapping some troops here, but they are able to hold out on the coast. Brazil will start to push down on the Indians. And yeah, now let's look at Asia, and I guess Africa, because India is able to send over their army, not all of it, but the majority of their army down here, and when they arrive, it's not that country. These countries will be forced to surrender, and I don't know why I didn't show this earlier, but is it really a surprise what happens over here? These countries aren't very strong to begin with, and they're nothing compared to India, which is probably number one in this world in strength. And yeah, these countries here, Southeast Asia, will just be annihilated, as yeah, and India can take more peaceful, more slow approach on this as they're weak. Actually, Afghanistan will start to be invaded, but not fully, as the Afghanistan people will hold out. And yeah, over in Turkey though, bad things happening for Turkey, as finally with some new troops, I hate this, with some new troops, the Indians are able to take this much land, and eventually Greece will join this war. And with Greece joining this war, it pretty much spells defeat out for Turkey. So I hate this. With all this land here being taken, Turkey will surrender over to, I guess, the green team at this point, which is great, as now they can move troops to other places, most notably Afghanistan, who was steamrolled and surrender. And eventually Australia and New Zealand will face invasion, and in New Zealand, with the threat of them being killed, the New Zealanders, I think they're called, will surrender, as they don't want to fight a war. And yeah, New Zealand surrenders with some new troops arriving on Australia, the Aussies, I don't know what I said, the Australians if a lot of their populated areas being taken, will start to crumble, but they importantly do not surrender, as they'd rather die than surrender to the ugly imperializers who smell. And yeah, is that racist? I didn't mean it to be if it was. Anyways, eventually after all the Australian coast is taken, they will surrender, which is good, as now troops can be moved over here. This has a giant effect as landing is made in Brazil. Yeah, Brazil is being steamrolled. Another landing is made over here. And yeah, Brazil surrenders. And pretty much all these countries here rather surrendered or liberated. And yeah, now with a lot of troops actually moving in to Alaska, pretty much spells defeat for the blue team, as all this land here is taken away from the blue team, and all of Alaska is liberated, and the countries in the blue team that are left at least will surrender, so we can look at this peace treaty. So in this peace treaty, a lot happened. Pasindia is huge now, Iran is huge, Ethiopia gained land, and Brazil's destroyed, Venezuela's huge, Central America, a whole new Alaska. Yeah, a lot happened, and I'm going to end today's video here. It was very fun to make, and bye everyone.